In less than 2 weeks, the 7th Assembly would come to an end and the 8th Assembly would begin. We spoke with a federal lawmaker, Senator Ifeanyi Okowa, to set an agenda for the incoming 8th Assembly.
The National Assembly was able to effectively amend the Constitution as promised, but they had issues with the executive. You are very much aware of that. And that process is on. I hope that to some extent that it could be resolved, but as to his job is to make the laws, and then the provision is that the president has to assent to it, because the Constitution itself is one of the laws of the nation, and therefore the president will have to assent to it. Some other people had thought that, at a stage we also thought that there was no need, particularly when it comes to the Constitution, for presidential assent, because the process goes far beyond the National Assembly into the impetus from the states, and therefore, if we follow through the process, that there was no need for a presidential assent. But to effect that, you also have to amend the Constitution. So you see the complexity in the whole process. We even also thought as an assembly that there was a need to have a new constitution completely, and to, rather than continuing to amend the constitution, but to be able to effect that too, you have to amend the constitution first before you can actually go on to possibly have a new constitution, a draft constitution, while you're operating on the old constitution. As for the PIB, it's very unfortunate. People like us are very sad, particularly those of us from the oil-producing states. We're quite sad that that PIB was not taken to where we expected it to be, to effectively become law during this current administration. It's unfortunate that we're not able, as a National Assembly, to progress it onto where it was passed by both chambers, because beyond being a law that would have affected lives in the host communities, the PIB itself was going to bring greater efficiency in the oil industry. It was going to ensure greater trust between the oil companies and the federal government. And that actually was needed because there's a lot of uncertainty at the moment as to, is the law going to be passed? Are we going to keep on operating on the old laws? So new investments are actually challenged, because the investor needs to know what law he was actually going to operate with. And because there is a lot of indecision at this moment, to a large extent, it brings a drag down on what investors we actually do.
Now, we know during the debate in the Senate, there were several issues which lawmakers faulted in the PIB. One was the issue of the host community development fund, how much should be going to the host communities, and then the issue of the powers of the minister, which some lawmakers felt was too much. Why were lawmakers not able to, to address these issues? Could these problems be responsible for why the PIB has not been passed?
Apparently, we have not been able, from the committee stage, to put everything in place and to get it laid down and have the debates effectively as it's been done in the House of Rep. In the National Health Bill, NAR and ART, there were provisions that were made in the ART, and when we discussed it on the floor of the Senate, the funding that was required in a particular clause as to the basic healthcare fund was reduced on the floor of the Senate from the 2% to 1% of the consolidated fund. So even if people had disagreement, by the time we had the opportunity to discuss this, it would have been possible to probably say, oh, hey, are we going with this percentage? Are we going to go down? Are we going to have an increase? What are the merits or demerits of the case? We have not had the opportunity to discuss that at the moment. The Northerners also felt that there was an agency that they needed for exploration and better funding, so that because they also believe that you have oil in the Chad Basin and in some other parts of the north, and they needed greater funding for exploratory activities.
Now, right now, there's been intense politicking in the National Assembly for the offices, for the seats of the principal officers of the National Assembly. For the first time in a long time, this is going to be a keenly contested election for the seats of the principal officers, to the extent that we're not clear on who would emerge as the principal officers in the National Assembly. What are your thoughts on this?
We are beginning to see a situation where a lot of people are offering themselves to serve in that leadership position, and it's a healthy thing. I think they have been quite civil in their languages. Everybody is competing, just as we compete in the elections. You're going on to tell people what do you think you can do, how you think you can manage the Senate, and I think that it is very healthy. The competition is quite healthy, and going forward, you don't even know who is likely to emerge because it's quite competitive. At the moment, 3 persons are in the race, and it's quite competitive. I believe that it's good for our nation. I believe that it's good for democracy, and it's good for the chamber of the Senate. The same thing is going on in the House of Rep. The only advice I will offer is that whosoever emerges at the end of the day after this competitive process should realize that the Senate is one family, one body, and all that he needs to do is to bring everybody together and not allow the family of the Senate to be, or the family of the National Assembly to be divided. We must ensure that we carry the views of all and then return to the process of being participatory in the governance process and partnering with the executive, with the judiciary, and all of Nigerians to deliver the dividends of democracy. I believe that what's going on will bring in a lot of efficiency, because whoever emerges is not going to be a stooge to anybody, and because he would have become a product of the choice of the people of the Senate or the House of Rep, and to that extent, his loyalty is to defend the institution of the National Assembly and defend the rights and the will of the people.
Now, this brings me to my next question. What qualities do you think the principal officers, particularly the Senate President, Deputy Senate President, and the Speaker and Deputy Speaker, what qualities, what characteristics do you think they should possess?
The person must have a good managerial style. He must be somebody who is able to carry the people along. Therefore, he must be a team player. The leader that must emerge must be one who will not be able to withhold information from his colleagues. So he must get his colleagues to buy into his leadership style and his management style. And he also must be a leader who is ready to be productive. Not one that is going to confront the executive, but one who is going to partner with the executive without shying away from being a correcting arm, being able to act in oversight over the executive and oversight over the judiciary. They must be ready to play this very complex role. It's a complex role because the leadership style will drive the process of being able to undertake that oversight function perfectly the way it should be. I believe that we have such people there. Those who are competing are qualified enough, and I hope that in the choice process, the senators who will be there casting the votes, or members of the House of Rep who will be there casting the votes that day, will have this in mind, that there are lots of things you need to look into before you have an informed decision. That informed decision is better than just having any decision. It should not be by way of sentiments.
Now, this is where we draw the curtains for this week's edition of The Gavel. If you have any views on any of the issues discussed, please email us on thegavel@channelstv.com. Thank you for staying with us and see you again next week.